Honorable authorities of our university, Dr. Hermes Alduvín Díaz Luna, Rector, Magíster Bartolomé Chinchilla, Vicerrector académico, Magíster Karen Eugene Amador, Decana de la Facultad de Humanidades, Magíster José Benito Martínez, Head of the Language and Literature Department, Ms. Erin Truller, Public Affairs Officer and U.S. Embassy Representative. Eminent speakers and distinguished participants of the 11th International Conference for Teachers of English, Achieving Goals in the Teaching of English. On behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to warmly welcome you all to this event.
As the famous South African leader Nelson Mandela once said, we must use time wisely and forever realize that the time is always right to do right. Today, in spite of the crisis in which the COVID-19 pandemic and the natural catastrophes have submerged us as a nation, the Universidad Pedagógica Nacional Francisco Morazán, fulfilling its role as the leading institution in the field of education, has organized this great event with the main purpose of being a worthy example for our society, demonstrating that adversities contribute to the development of an innovative spirit in human beings, which will ultimately enable us to implement effective strategies to continue working on the reconstruction of our country, starting, of course, in our classrooms.
For this event, we hope to make a positive impact on your lives, and we expect that your commitment becomes the multiplier effect of our mission as an institution, which is to train individuals with scientific, humanistic, and innovative technological competencies for the development of our educational system. Let's always remember that being an example is not the main way of influencing others. It is the only way. Thank you for joining us today.
Para dar por inaugurada la 11ª Conferencia Internacional de Profesores de Inglés 2020, tenemos el honor de escuchar la intervención del excelentísimo rector de la Universidad Pedagógica Nacional, Dr. Hermes Alduvín Díaz.
Muy buenas tardes. Tengan todos y todas. Tengo el honor de darle la más cordial bienvenida al 11º Congreso Internacional para Profesores de Inglés 2020. Distinguida señora Erin Truller, consejera de Prensa y Cultura de la Embajada de Estados Unidos en Honduras. Distinguido vicerrector académico Magíster Bartolomé Chinchilla. Distinguido profesor José Benito Martínez, jefe del Departamento de Letras y Lenguas de la Universidad Pedagógica. Apreciada profesora María Luz Gómez, coordinadora de la carrera de inglés en nuestra universidad. Distinguida profesora Gloria Ulloa, coordinadora del Centro de Idiomas y demás miembros del equipo organizador de este congreso. Estimadas autoridades de la Universidad Pedagógica Nacional Francisco Morazán, de todos los centros regionales y del campus central. Estimados docentes y estudiantes de la carrera del profesorado de la enseñanza del inglés, distinguidos conferencistas, talleristas y especialistas invitados, estimados docentes de inglés de los diferentes niveles del sistema educativo de todo el país, distinguido público participante. Quiero brindarles a todos la más cordial de las bienvenidas a este espacio que ha logrado un gran renombre dentro y fuera de la Universidad Pedagógica Nacional Francisco Morazán y que es promovido por la carrera de profesorado en la enseñanza del inglés del Departamento de Letras y Lenguas de nuestra universidad. En primer lugar, quiero agradecer a los conferencistas y talleristas nacionales e internacionales que hoy nos honran con su valiosa participación en este encuentro. Felicito a las autoridades, docentes y estudiantes de la carrera del profesorado de la enseñanza del inglés en la Universidad Pedagógica Nacional, ya que este Congreso para Docentes de Inglés es un magnífico producto de su profesionalismo, gestión académica cultural y pasión por el futuro de la educación nacional. Agradezco a todas las instituciones gubernamentales, no gubernamentales, porque se han convertido en aliados estratégicos para el desarrollo integral de nuestros egresados y también de nuestros proyectos de crecimiento y gestión en el área de la comunicación y la enseñanza del inglés. Y ofrezco un especial agradecimiento a la Embajada Americana en Honduras, ya que es siempre un apoyo certero para nuestros proyectos académicos y culturales. Considero que las universidades, como entes rectores de la educación superior, mediante nuestras líneas estratégicas, tenemos la oportunidad y la responsabilidad de, en estos tiempos de la pandemia provocada por la COVID-19, proponer acciones innovadoras que permitan al docente de inglés renovarse con ideas de progreso, planificadas en conjunto, tal y como lo expondrán los conferencistas invitados en este congreso. Veamos este espacio como una gran oportunidad de crecer y de actualizar nuestros conocimientos en el ámbito de la academia, la gestión, la ciencia y la tecnología, la investigación sobre lingüística, literatura y metodología de la enseñanza del inglés. Pero sobre todo, veámoslo como una magnífica oportunidad para aprender unos de otros. Agradezco a todos los profesionales que compartirán sus conocimientos y experiencias en este congreso. Nada más valioso que aprender del que viene a enseñarnos las buenas prácticas que han sido motivadas por su trabajo diario. Quiero felicitarles a ustedes, apreciados profesores de inglés de todo el país, por haber tomado la tan acertada decisión de invertir su tiempo en este congreso, que sin duda será motivador en estos momentos en que enfrentamos esta dura lucha contra la pandemia y que debemos hacerlo con esperanza. Les exhorto a continuar siempre en la búsqueda de la excelencia a través de nuestro trabajo de calidad. No olviden que la Universidad Pedagógica Nacional Francisco Morazán es y será siempre su casa, y que nosotros nos sentimos orgullosos de su ardua labor que ustedes realizan por la educación nacional. Nuevamente, reciban una afectuosa bienvenida y con mucho orgullo doy por inaugurado el 11º Congreso Internacional para Profesores de Inglés 2020. Muchas gracias por su amable presencia.
To continue with our ceremony, let's listen to the remarks of the U.S. Embassy representative and Public Affairs Officer, Ms. Erin Truller.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm so honored to be here today to participate in the opening ceremony of the 11th National Conference for Teachers of English, organized by one of our distinguished partners in promoting English language learning in Honduras, the Francisco Morazán National Pedagogical University. I'd like to recognize Dr. Diaz, Rector of Universidad Pedagógica Nacional Francisco Morazán, Vice Rector Chinchilla, Professor Martinez, Director of the Language and Literature Department, and all of our esteemed presenters for this Congress. I'd also like to recognize, of course, all of the wonderful English language teachers who not only empower our students to learn English, but in so doing are also working hard to develop the next generation of local, national, and global leaders. We all know that true leaders emerge during times of crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic and hurricanes Eta and Iota have highlighted the leadership of citizens across Honduras, from essential workers keeping store shelves stocked, to frontline medical professionals that have risked their own lives to keep us safe, to Hondurans helping their fellow citizens who in some cases have lost everything due to the hurricanes. And among the emerging leaders and heroes in these uncertain times, the role of all of you as teachers and professors has also stood out. Teachers have repeatedly demonstrated the type of courageous leadership that is needed to respond to the changing and challenging landscape of the new virtual classroom. And as a parent myself of 2 grade school age children, I am more in awe than ever of all of you as teachers and professors, of your flexibility, creativity, capacity for your own learning in this challenging and new environment, and absolutely, probably most of all, your resilience. Your leadership allows our communities to connect with others during a time of intense disconnection and isolation, and to build our collective resilience as we wade through the multiple crises we're facing here in Honduras. The tremendous efforts that you make in the development of your students in their pursuits of English language learning not only provide the sense of normalcy and well-being that our students need, but also open the door to new opportunities for them in the future when hopefully we're able to put all of this behind us. As you continue to adapt to the accelerated pace and the intensity of these changes, leading your students in virtual classrooms and experimenting with social media and other digital platforms to engage and connect with them, please know that the United States government, through the U.S. Embassy here in Honduras, remains committed to supporting you in these efforts through training and conferences such as this one. And please do, I want to take a moment just to remind you, please do follow our embassy's social media pages for more opportunities and the English language resources. It's a great place to find out what's coming up in terms of conferences and different opportunities to learn things, particularly about the way we speak English in the United States. A very special thank you to our regional English language officer based in Mexico, Dr. Ruth Petzold, and to our English language specialists, Dr. DJ Kaiser and Ms. Erica Hildebrand, for sharing their expertise and resources for virtual English teaching. They are wonderful examples of the rich academic tradition that we have long shared and will continue to share with our partners here in the region. And I want to leave you with this. As you well know, education will always be affected by current events and context, whether it's social, economic, political, historical, or in this case, a pandemic and 2 hurricanes. But you have proven, you professors, teachers of English have proven over and over again in challenging, including in the very challenging current context, that teaching, and specifically English teaching, can be successful outside of the normal classroom. In this case, the virtual classroom and all of the other ways that you have found to engage with your students and ensure that they continue learning English and the other subjects that you teach, even while we're dealing with all of these challenges. So on behalf of the U.S. Embassy here in Honduras, I want to thank you for your hard work. I want to congratulate you on your success in these incredibly difficult times. And I want to encourage you to stay strong in your efforts to empower the next generation of leaders while adapting your English teaching to the current environment. We very much look forward to continuing to partner with you. Thank you so much.
Como punto final de la ceremonia de inauguración de nuestro evento, escucharemos las palabras del distinguido jefe del Departamento de Letras y Lenguas, profesor José Benito Martínez.
Muy buenas tardes a todos quienes integran la mesa de honor, representante de la Embajada de los Estados Unidos en América, de América en Honduras, señor rector de la Universidad Pedagógica Nacional Francisco Morazán, vicerrector académico, decana de la Facultad de Humanidades, coordinadora de la carrera y presidenta del comité organizador de este evento, autoridades y docentes tanto del campus central como de los centros regionales, profesores del Departamento de Letras y Lenguas y especialmente de la carrera de la enseñanza del inglés, docentes que participan en esta 11ª conferencia para profesores de inglés, les ofrezco a todos la más cordial bienvenida. Este evento que hoy nos reúne de manera virtual aspira a ser un espacio para la formación continua de los docentes de inglés, que les permita adquirir nuevos conocimientos, reforzar sus experiencias docentes, reflexionar prácticas pedagógicas e innovar la tradición en la enseñanza de una lengua relevante y prestigiosa como es el inglés. Desde que esta conferencia fue ideada y desarrollada en su primera edición en el año 2000 por un grupo de jóvenes docentes de la carrera de inglés de nuestra universidad, ya se sabía que entre los factores asociados a la elevación de la calidad educativa, la formación de docentes inicial y permanente representa un componente de primer orden. Así lo expresa el informe de PREAL, Educación, un desafío impostergable. El éxito de un sistema educativo depende fundamentalmente de la calidad del desempeño de sus docentes. No es posible hablar de mejora de la educación sin atender el desarrollo profesional de los profesores. Por eso en esta universidad creemos que los docentes deben estar permanentemente actualizados y que eventos como este, organizados y desarrollados con altos estándares de calidad, nos permiten ofrecer a la comunidad educativa de egresados y no egresados en el ámbito nacional y regional espacios para la formación tan necesaria como obligada por las demandas sociales del entorno. Aprovecho para agradecer el enorme esfuerzo del comité organizador y de las instituciones que generosamente colaboran en su desarrollo. En esta 11ª entrega de este evento se abordarán temas de relevancia fundamental a través de conferencias, ponencias y talleres que sin duda los moverán a reflexionar sus prácticas pedagógicas y a propiciar la innovación educativa en las aulas, en las que estudiantes del siglo XXI se apropien de prácticas sociales del lenguaje que les permita satisfacer sus necesidades comunicativas y desarrollar estrategias de aprendizaje. Además de crear conciencia acerca de la existencia y riqueza de la cultura representada en esa segunda lengua o lengua extranjera. Este es el espacio idóneo para reflexionar sobre la importancia del aprendizaje del inglés como agente de pluralización y tolerancia, para responder al hecho de vivir en un mundo globalizado que exige intercambios de internacionalización en los diversos entornos de la educación, la economía, la medicina, la tecnología, la cultura, el arte y el entretenimiento. Los invito a aprovechar todas las oportunidades de aprendizaje que este evento ofrece, no solo para reflexionar la importancia de la adquisición de una segunda lengua o lengua extranjera. Digamos que este es un asunto en el que ya coincidimos todos por el hecho de estar aquí presentes. La tarea pendiente es fortalecer sus capacidades docentes para la enseñanza del inglés de manera efectiva, nunca más como una materia o como un requisito para promover a los estudiantes de un grado a otro, sino para facilitarles el dominio de este idioma como una herramienta de comunicación y como una forma de enriquecer la vida académica, social y cultural de los estudiantes. Esto es lo urgente y este es, al parecer, el momento propicio para que una educación de calidad, justa e inclusiva les cambie la vida a nuestros niños y jóvenes de la región. Bienvenidos a la 11ª Conferencia Internacional para Profesores de Inglés. Buenas tardes para todos.
This virtual event, delivered over 3 days, offers a wide range of expert presentations brought to our virtual audience by 22 specialists who will provide teachers of English with the necessary tools to cope with the challenges of the current situation in our educational system.
Remember that you can attend the sessions of your preference through the link provided in the link of our conference in our Facebook page, International Conference for Teachers of English. Keep in mind that as a requirement to get your diploma by the end of this event, you have to attend at least 8 sessions. Now, let us begin with our first session, Achieving the Goal of a More Native-like Pronunciation in English Language Learners by Dr. Scott Jeffrey Lamana.
Dr. Scott Lamana is an associate professor of Spanish in the Department of World Languages at Calvin University in Grand Rapids, Michigan, United States. He received his MA and PhD in Hispanic linguistics from Indiana University. He works in the areas of variationist linguistics, social linguistics, functional syntax, and second language acquisition. His current research focuses on the role of language and dialect contact in shaping varieties of Spanish in the United States. With you, Dr. Scott Lamana.
Good afternoon to everyone. I want to begin just by thanking everyone for the opportunity to speak with you today. I consider it an honor and a privilege to begin this conference with you, to be the first speaker, delivering some remarks here at this conference. And I wanted to begin expressing the fact that that Spanish-speaking countries, and in Honduras in particular, have a special place in my heart. I studied abroad in Colombia, and I met my wife there. She's a native speaker of Spanish from Colombia, from Bogota. But in addition to that, my wife and I recently welcomed 2 Honduran refugee children to our home. So I have that connection with Honduras at home that has allowed Honduras to have a very special place in my heart. I hope someday to have the opportunity to visit Honduras. But I'd actually like to begin showing you some photos here. I'm going to share my screen to share a PowerPoint. If you will bear with me just one second. Can everyone see my screen, the PowerPoint? Is it actually sharing? I'm not able to see if it's sharing or not. Okay, I can see now that it's sharing. Thank you. Okay, so I wanted to begin showing you some photos here of my family. I apologize for the delay as I start the PowerPoint here. I'm just having some technical difficulties starting my PowerPoint. I apologize.
Sharing with no problem. Sharing with no problem.
Hold on just 1 minute. I need to stop sharing for just 1 second to start my PowerPoint. Okay, it should work now here in just 1 second. Can everyone see the PowerPoint now? Yes, I believe so. Okay, so I just wanted to begin, before I begin with the content of my presentation, I wanted to just share some photos of my family. So here you can see my wife, Olga Lucia, from Colombia, and my children, Aidan and Glenda, who are from Peña Blanca, Cortés in Honduras. Glenda just began her studies at Grand Valley State University. So this photo is from the day that we took her to the university. To move in, we're all wearing our masks, obviously, because of the pandemic in this photo. The other photos were taken before the pandemic. This is a photo of Aiden's graduation from high school, which was in 2019. So the topic of my presentation is achieving a more native-like pronunciation in English as a second language. So the desire to improve their pronunciation is a nearly universal goal among second language learners. And assisting students in improving their pronunciation is also a high priority for language instructors, including all of you who are attending this conference. The goal of this presentation is to provide an overview of key areas of non-native pronunciation of English by native Spanish speakers, along with practical tips for helping students achieve the goal of a more native-like pronunciation in the era of COVID-19, in which we all find ourselves at this time. As we are adjusting to new virtual methods of teaching and learning, and as we strive to maintain educational quality and adapt our methodologies to the current situation, we've all needed to be very flexible, and we've all needed to learn new skills and to experiment with new technologies. So that's some of what I'm going to be discussing today. During this presentation, I'm going to consider 4 key areas of non-native pronunciation of English by native Spanish speakers. One area that I'm going to discuss is the differences between the English and Spanish vowel systems. I'll also be talking about differences in suprasegmental features, including rhythm and intonation. I will also discuss differences in syllable structure between English and Spanish, and also some English consonants that are particularly challenging for Spanish native speakers to pronounce. So beginning with Spanish versus English vowels, as you know, the English vowel system represents a significant challenge for native speakers of Spanish and many other languages with simpler vowel systems. English has one of the most complex vowel systems in the world, among the world's languages. Spanish has only 5 vowel phonemes, a, e, o, u, whereas English has many more. The exact number varies by dialect. But here you can see a representation of the Spanish vowel system with the 5 vowels a, e, o, u. And then in the next slide, you can see a representation of the English vowel system, which, as I mentioned, varies by dialect. Not all dialects have all of these vowels, but these are the phonetic symbols for the vowels that exist in different dialects of English, which we will look at some specific examples in just 1 minute. So obviously, just looking at this chart, you can see how much more complex the English vowel system is. And as far as comparing the two systems, in addition to the fact that Spanish has a much simpler system and English has a considerably more complex system, there are other differences that are important for our students to be aware of and for us to help them with. Vowels in Spanish have a less abrupt beginning. And what I mean by that is that English has a glottal stop where the vocal cords close briefly. And this often occurs before vowels. It occurs in an expression, for example, when somebody says in English, uh-oh, there is a glottal stop between the two vowels, and o, uh-oh. So this is something that occurs in English, but not in Spanish. Spanish vowels have a more abrupt ending, whereas English vowels have a less abrupt ending. They often end with a semi-vowel, thus forming a diphthong. So for example, when you pronounce O in English, it's actually a diphthong, O, beginning with O and ending with U, O, O. So the ending is less abrupt because there's a transition from a nuclear vowel to a semi-vowel. In Spanish, vowels are generally not reduced. By reduced, I mean they're not modified or eliminated as much as in English. In English, vowels are reduced in many unstressed syllables to a schwa. So for example, the word about, A-B-O-U-T, the first vowel is reduced to a schwa and is pronounced about. The neutral position in Spanish is A. When someone is thinking of what to say next in Spanish, they will often say A. In English, the neutral position is So English speakers will often, when they're trying to think of what to say next, they will often use the vowel And actually, the use of one versus the other is something that actually can make your pronunciation or your speech sound more native. If you, for example, if you are a Spanish native speaker and you, instead of using A, if you don't know what to say next, when you're speaking English, you use it does make you sound more native. And the reverse is also true. A lot of English speakers who speak Spanish will say when they're speaking Spanish, and they have to learn to say A. So even the vowels that are used when you're not actually saying a word can be part of the goal for native-like pronunciation. And in Spanish, there is less dialectal variation in the vowels, very little. Whereas in English, there is a great deal of dialectal variation in the vowels. For example, American English and British English have different vowel systems, and we're going to see some examples later of some specific words where the pronunciation is different in British versus American English. So I have listed here some strategies for mastering the English vowel system. And some of these specifically, I'm going to talk about using them in the virtual environment. So practicing minimal pairs with similar vowels is a common technique when trying to teach the English vowel system, distinguishing, for example, between the E of sheep and the I of ship, or between U as in Luke, or as in look, or between A as in late and E as in let. And mastering these distinctions is very important. These confusing the two vowels in some of these pairs can cause misunderstandings. My wife, when she first came to the United States, she was taking care of some children for some friends of ours, and one of their sons is named Luke. One of their sons is named Luke, and my wife was trying to say this word look, but she was pronouncing it Luke, Luke. And so the child, Luke, thought that she was calling his name where she was actually trying to tell another child to look at something. So learning to distinguish these vowels is important for effective communication in English. So there is a website and a mobile app called Sounds of Speech. I listed here the mobile app because the website uses Flash Player, Adobe Flash Player, and that is unfortunately going to be disabled at the end of this month. But there is a mobile app for Sounds of Speech that can be downloaded. It costs $3.99 in the United States. So there is a small cost to it, but this is a mobile app that can be used for English pronunciation practice. And I would like to actually show you the website version of Sounds of Speech, which, as I mentioned, unfortunately, is only going to be available through the end of this month, through the end of December. But the mobile app replicates many of the features of the website. So I'm going to go to this website and demonstrate to you how this works. So this website, which is now a mobile app, this website will work through the end of December. So if you want to use it with your students or just practice exploring it, if you want to get to know what's on there and what possibilities are there, you can go to the website through the end of December. After that, you'll have to use the mobile app. If you go to this website, you go to vowels. They're divided into monophthongs and diphthongs. And if you go to monophthongs, then they're divided into front, central, and back vowels. So to look at one of the pairs that we were looking at in the PowerPoint, E versus I, this website is a really great tool for working on distinguishing these two vowels that were in the minimal pairs that I shared. You can see a demonstration of how the vowel is pronounced. You can see the position of the tongue. You can see that it's a front vowel, and you can contrast it with I, which is very similar. And you can practice repeating words. You can repeat the actual vowel sound. And then you can repeat words.
Eat, week, tree.
You can do the same thing with I.
Invite, pin.
And now that this is a mobile app, one strategy that English teachers can use is to ask their students to download the app. And if everybody has the app on a smartphone, then the app can be used for pronunciation practice, assuming that everyone has access to a smartphone and can pay for the app. But it's not too expensive. Unfortunately, it's not a free app, but it costs $4. So it hopefully would be something that many people would be able to purchase without a problem. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint now. Another feature that can be used in virtual classrooms to practice pronunciation, Google Translate has a new pronunciation practice feature that allows you, when you go to Google Translate and you enter a word, you can hear it pronounced, and you can choose between British English and American English. And then you can also record yourself saying the word, practicing the word, and then receive feedback from Google Translate on your pronunciation. So Google Translate can tell you if you pronounced the word like a native speaker or not. They can tell you if it sounded like a different word. And so that's a way that you can also, it's a virtual exercise, something that students can do virtually to practice their pronunciation. And obviously, as always, it's key to interact with and imitate native speakers. In the time of COVID-19, this must be done, safely, virtually. But setting up opportunities to interact with native speakers via Zoom or Google Meet or some other platform can allow students to practice their vowel pronunciations with native speakers. Okay, another area that I would like to discuss involves differences in suprasegmental features. Suprasegmental features are features that go beyond individual segments or individual sounds. One of these features is rhythm. And English and Spanish have some differences in terms of the rhythm of speech. And one of the main differences between English and Spanish is that in English, the contrast in length between stressed and unstressed syllables is frequently much greater than in Spanish. In Spanish, stressed syllables are a little bit longer than unstressed syllables in general. In English, sometimes stressed syllables can be much longer than unstressed syllables, or at least some stressed syllables can be considerably longer than some unstressed syllables. So I recorded myself here pronouncing this sentence. Before I play the recording, I just want to point out that with a slow and careful pronunciation, this would be, right, we picketed them for 3 hours. However, during normal speech, it would sound more like this. We picketed them for 3 hours. I'm going to play it one more time. We picketed them for 3 hours. So when I read that sentence, the way that I would naturally speak it, you may have noticed that the second and third syllable of this verb were very reduced. We picketed it. The pronoun them in speech tends to get reduced to m or And then these two syllables, 3 hours, were more emphasized, and so they were longer. I'm going to play it one more time. We picketed them for 3 hours. So this is something very typical in the rhythm of English, to have stressed syllables that are considerably longer than some unstressed syllables. So helping students to be aware that this happens can help them with their pronunciation and to have a more native-like rhythm in English. I'm going to play another example here. I shouldn't have gone. So as you can hear, from that recording. This syllable and this syllable are reduced, right? They're considerably shorter. I shouldn't have gone. I shouldn't have, right? In very careful, slow speech, I should not have gone, but it tends to be reduced. Whereas in Spanish,
we ticketed him for 3 hours.
Sorry. In Spanish, the length of stressed and unstressed syllables is more similar. Another important difference between English and Spanish in the suprasegmental features has to do with intonation. When you compare the typical intonation in the two languages, oftentimes there is a greater contrast between high and low tones in English than there is in Spanish. And you can see this in a very basic everyday greeting. So I recorded the English and my wife recorded the Spanish for me.
Good morning.
Buenos días.
I'm going to play that one more time and notice in English that the intonation rises more than in Spanish.
Good morning.
Buenos días.
So this is something else that students may not be aware of, that it's good for them to be aware of, that in English, the difference between a lower tone and a higher tone in basic conversational situations is often greater. A typical Spanish pronunciation to an English speaker can sound less enthusiastic, or the person perhaps might appear to be bored or not as interested in the greeting. So practicing this and trying to have a sharper rise in tone can be helpful.
Good morning.
Buenos días.
All right, continuing on.
Buenos.
Oh, sorry. Okay, another difference between English and Spanish has to do with syllable structure. In English, syllables frequently begin with S plus another consonant. Two examples are the words school, where you have S and K, school, and stress, where you actually have 3, stress, stress, stress. In Spanish, there is a phonotactic constraint that prohibits beginning a syllable with S plus a consonant. So the Spanish equivalents of these words, escuela, estres, right? The S is at the end of the first syllable, not at the beginning of the second syllable. Spanish native speakers often will add an epenthetic A to English words that begin with S plus consonant. I had an experience with a Mexican friend of mine when she was saying my name. I noticed that she would say, "Hi, Scott," where she would prolong the S. She would say Scott, and I couldn't figure out why. And then I realized that she was trying to not say Scott. So that's perhaps one technique that you could use with your students initially until they learn to just say Scott without putting an A at the beginning. Because in English it's pronounced Scott and not Scott. All right, continuing on from there. I'm going to talk about some English consonants that are challenging for Spanish native speakers. As you know, the digraph TH corresponds to 2 distinct consonantal phonemes in English. Theta, represented by this phonetic symbol, and ed, represented by this phonetic symbol. So theta represents a voiceless dental or interdental fricative, whereas ed represents a voiced dental or interdental fricative. Some examples of words with theta are with, thick, and thin, and examples of words with ed are this, that, and whether. So of course, using minimal pairs can be helpful to help students master these sounds by distinguishing them from similar sounds. So if you want to distinguish theta from ed, there are not many minimal pairs, but there are some between these two sounds. So this word is ether, ether with voiceless interdental fricative, ether. And this word is either, either with the, right? The spelling does not indicate the pronunciation because the same spelling is used for both. Another example is teeth with theta, teeth, versus teeth with ed, teeth. For students who have difficulty pronouncing either or both of these sounds, you can have them practice minimal pairs such as thick versus sick, thin versus sin, thick versus tick, with versus wit. Or if you want to practice with ev and a voiced consonant like z, then versus zen, or these versus z's. And going back to the Sounds of Speech website, you could also use this to practice these sounds. If you go to consonants, manner, fricative, you can pronounce theta and ed here. I'm going to play the video so you can see the demonstration of this as an interdental sound. You can see that her tongue is between her teeth as she pronounces this. This can be helpful for students to see that in a video. And then they can listen to the words and repeat.
Thing, toothbrush, with.
Okay, for ed, you can see in the video also that this is an interdental sound, but it's voiced, right? And if you do the demonstration here, you can see that there is vibration of the vocal cords because this is a voiced sound. And students can listen here to the words and repeat.
That, wither, smooth.
So again, the Sounds of Speech website, which is available through the end of December, and then the app is a very useful tool for helping students achieve a more native-like pronunciation virtually during this pandemic. Another consonant in English that can be challenging for Spanish native speakers is the voiced labiodental fricative V, right, from the letter V. Most varieties of Spanish do not have this as a phoneme. Words that are spelled with this letter in Spanish are pronounced with the phoneme B. So native speakers of Spanish should take care to avoid using B here. Again, minimal pairs can be used to practice the distinction between these two phonemes. Vowels versus vowels. Bow versus vow. Berry versus vary. Boat versus vote. Another consonant that can be challenging for English, for Spanish native speakers learning English is sh, which is a voiceless alveopalatal fricative. The closest sound to sh in Spanish is ch. So native speakers of Spanish should take care to avoid using ch here. Here are examples of some minimal pairs that can be used to practice the distinction between these two phonemes. So ship versus chip, shoes versus choose, wash versus watch. Also be aware and help your students to be aware of cases where sh is represented orthographically by ch, which in English usually corresponds to the same sound as in Spanish, ch. However, there are words in English, often they are place names, where ch is actually pronounced sh. For example, the third largest city in the United States in English is pronounced Chicago, not Chicago, like in Spanish, Chicago. Charlotte, a city in North Carolina, the ch also represents the sound sh, Charlotte, Charlotte. And the state where I live in English is pronounced Michigan, Michigan, not Michigan, Michigan. So helping students to be aware of this so that they can have a more native-like pronunciation of this sound can be helpful. Also, if students need to see the difference between sh and ch, again, you can use sounds of speech. You can find sh under fricative. And see a demonstration. And then you can find ch under affricate.
Cha. Cha.
So one of the key differences is that since ch is an affricate, it is composed of a stop and a fricative. And for the stop portion of this sound, there is contact between the tongue and the alveopalatal region.
Cha. Cha.
Whereas with sh, which is a fricative, although the tongue approximates or moves closer to this region, there's actually not contact. So the airflow continues uninterrupted. And again, students can listen to examples of words.
Shoe. Fishing. Wish.
And practice repeating. Another challenge for native Spanish speakers learning English is distinguishing between y and j. Y corresponds to a voiced palatal semiconsonant. J corresponds to a voiced alveopalatal affricate. And Spanish speakers should try to avoid audible friction when pronouncing words with the sound y represented by the letter y. Again, minimal pairs can be used to practice the distinction between these two phonemes. And here, just as I have recorded myself, in this case, practicing the minimal pair, this is something that teachers can do in the virtual environment. Using a list of minimal pairs, they can record themselves in a PowerPoint pronouncing the two words and then have their students listen and repeat.
Yet, jet, yam, jam.
And again, using sounds of speech, you can see the articulatory difference between these two sounds. Y is listed under glide.
Ya. Ya.
So I use the term semiconsonant, which corresponds to glide in English. And you can hear the sound here as well.
Y.
And you'll notice here that there's no contact between the tongue and the roof of the mouth.
Ya. Ya. Yellow. Opinion.
And then if you go under affricate for j,
Ja. Ja.
there is contact between the tongue and the alveopalatal region.
J. Job. Badger. Cage.
So again, it can be really helpful for students to see what is happening within the mouth, to be able to watch a native speaker pronouncing the sound and then to repeat the words after that person. Okay, so up until now, I've been speaking in fairly general terms. Now I would like to focus in a little bit on some of the differences between British and American English in pronunciation, and then mention some tools, and I'm actually going to show you a video that provides some helpful contrast between these two varieties. So one of the main ways to divide English dialects is to divide them between rhotic and non-rhotic varieties. The term rhotic refers to the pronunciation of words that historically had an R sound, In a rhotic variety of English, R is pronounced in all phonetic contexts. Where there is a written letter R, it's pronounced in all these contexts in a rhotic variety. In a non-rhotic variety, R is not pronounced in post-vocalic contexts when it appears immediately after a vowel and is not followed by another vowel. Some examples of post-vocalic R include car, fourth, weather. I just pronounced these words speaking a rhotic variety of English because I am American. So I speak a rhotic variety of English. Car, fourth, weather. A speaker of standard British English would say car, fourth, weather, without pronouncing the R. So before we focus in on British versus American, just in general terms, I wanted to mention what the rhotic varieties of English are and what the non-rhotic varieties are. So rhotic varieties of English are spoken in Ireland, in Scotland, in most parts of the United States and Canada, and this includes standard American English and standard Canadian English. There also are some rhotic varieties in southwestern England, but the majority of England is non-rhotic, along with Wales, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. As I mentioned, most parts of England, including standard British English or received pronunciation, is non-rhotic, as well as some parts of the northeastern and southern United States, including Boston, New York City, some coastal areas in the southern United States are non-rhotic. And so this rhoticity versus non-rhoticity is one of the main features distinguishing standard British and American English today. And in fact, this is one of the main features that's used, to identify any English or to classify any English dialect. Another notable difference between British and American English has to do with pronunciation of intervocalic T and D. In American English, T and D in this context, in an intervocalic context, in American English, in this context, flapping commonly occurs, in which the T or the D is realized as an alveolar flap, or it's sometimes called a tap. A sound like and this is actually the same sound as in the Spanish word pero. But in American English, it corresponds to the letters T or D between vowels. This phenomenon does not occur in standard British English. So we're going to hear this word pronounced in British and American English.
Better. Better.
So the British pronunciation was beta, with a t sound. The American English pronunciation was better, with the flap sound. Another important difference between the two dialects is the occurrence of yod dropping in standard American English. In this phenomenon, words that are historically pronounced with U are pronounced with oo. So we're going to hear the word new in British versus American English.
New. No.
So in British English and in standard British English, new, you, new, new. In American English, new.
New. No.
And there are also some differences between vowels in the two varieties, some of which are illustrated in this video, which I would like to now show you. We're not going to watch all of it. So the link here may not work. Okay, I tried it before the presentation and it was working fine. So I'm going to look for the video very quickly in YouTube because it is very good and I would like to show it to you. I think it would be very helpful for you to be able to see it. So I'm exiting my PowerPoint briefly. I'm going to go to YouTube so we can watch this video here.
Hello everyone and welcome back to English with Lucy.
And we're actually going to skip an introductory part of this video. Okay, we're going to begin here with the introduction of the speakers. This video talks about differences between British and American English and also Australian English. So you get kind of a three-way comparison here, which is interesting.
Hey there, I'm Emma from the English YouTube channel, coming at you from Perth in Western Australia. And we also have Vanessa. Hi, I'm Vanessa and I live in North Carolina in the US. I run the YouTube channel Speak English with Vanessa. And I'm speaking with modern received pronunciation, so not everyone from Britain speaks like me, it depends where you're from. These are two fantastic teachers and I have left all of their information in the description box, so you should definitely go and check them out. We are going to look at 6 sounds, and for each of these 6 sounds, I have included 5 example words. So you'll hear us say the words and then we'll look at how we pronounce them differently. Okay, we've got the first 5 words. Tuesday, 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 YouTube, 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 tuna, 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 news, 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 duty, 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 duty. So you can hear that Vanessa does something called yod dropping. In British English and Australian English, these words have a yes sound. Tuesday, tuna, duty, news. In American English, they often drop this yes sound. It's called yod dropping. Tuesday, duty, Tuesday, duty. You can also hear when we join a t and a yes sound, sometimes we blend these together to make a ch sound. And Emma does this when she says Tuesday, tuna, Tuesday, tuna. This is also common in British English. It's something that I do, especially when I'm speaking quickly. Can you give me some tuna? It's Tuesday today. Many people say this is wrong or lazy. It's not, it's efficient. Let's have a look another time at Vanessa saying what I call duty, duty, duty. She says duty. So not only does she drop that yes sound to make do instead of due, she also replaces the t sound with a d sound. And that's something we're going to look at a bit more later on. Emma also replaces the t with a d sound, but she doesn't drop the yes sound. I say duty, she says duty, Judy. And that's funny because we do say Judy in English, but it only refers to the woman's name Judy. Let's have a look at the next set of words. All of these in British English pronunciation have an O sound.
So for this next part, she's going to focus in on one of the differences in the vowels between British and American English.
Modern, 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 bottle, 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 sorry, 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 shopping, 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 borrow, 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 borrow. Now you can hear that where we say the O sound, as in modern, Vanessa in American English says the ah sound, modern, modern. She also pronounces the ah, the sound at the end of the word, and we don't tend to do this in British English. Now, the Australian pronunciation is very similar here to the British English pronunciation. Emma's O sound is maybe slightly more relaxed, but the difference is absolutely tiny. I say bottle, which can sound quite posh. If I were to speak really quickly, I might say bottle of water. But if I'm speaking slowly and clearly, a bottle of water. Australian English, American English, they replace that T with a D. Bottle, 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 bottle. So Australian...
Actually, just one note here. So it's actually a flap that they're using in American and Australian English. British English speakers often perceive that sound as a D, but it's actually a flap.
English and British English here are extremely similar. American English is quite different. So now we're going to look at the T sound, or not in some cases, because in American English and Australian English, sometimes they don't pronounce the letter T as a T. Now it's...
Okay, actually, I'm going to stop the video there, but I wanted to watch some of it with you because I think that videos like this can be really useful, a really useful tool for engaging with our students in a virtual environment and providing them with models of native pronunciation. And especially a video like this that is well done and where the words are pronounced clearly can be really helpful. All right. So thinking in terms of this virtual environment that we find ourselves in right now during COVID-19, and thinking in terms of concrete strategies for helping our students achieve a more native-like pronunciation in this environment. Again, I had mentioned this idea before, but it's important. It's equally important virtually as it is in person for students to interact with native speakers of English as much as possible and to imitate their speech. Perhaps the virtual environment can actually be an advantage, assuming that people have good internet access. Perhaps people who in traditional face-to-face classrooms did not have access to native speakers of English. In the virtual environment, through guest speakers or videos, etc., may actually have more opportunities to interact with native speakers of English and to imitate their speech. Watching online English tutorial videos, such as the one that I just showed you, can be incredibly helpful. So I wanted to mention again here on this list, the Sounds of Speech website, which, as I mentioned, will be available through December 2020. Unfortunately, it is expiring this month because the Flash player is being disabled. But the app will be available after this year. Another technique that that I found helpful learning Spanish and that people have also found helpful learning English is to listen to music in English, for example, on YouTube, while simultaneously following along with the lyrics. This can be helpful practicing pronunciation. If you sing along with the lyrics, you can practice pronouncing the words like the people do in the song. Sometimes it can be easier for students to learn certain sounds in a song than speaking. They can learn it first singing and then learn it speaking. Another suggestion, which actually came from that video that I showed you of learning English with Lucy, is to read a book in English, read a print book or the actual book where you see the words, while listening at the same time to the audiobook version. So as you're listening to the audiobook, as you're listening to the book being read to you, you're looking at the words written on paper or in an electronic ebook. So if you listen to it at the same time that you read it, this assists your brain in making connections between spelling and pronunciation. So this can be really helpful as well, especially because as you all know, English spelling often does not correspond to the pronunciation or does not provide a very reliable guide to pronunciation. So this technique can be particularly helpful for that reason. So I'm coming to the conclusion of my talk, but as language instructors, we should encourage our students to persevere in their efforts to acquire a more native-like pronunciation, even in the midst of a global pandemic, where we're all having to persevere in many ways as instructors and as students. And it's important to remember that while perfect pronunciation in a second language is an unattainable goal, at least for most people, improvement is always possible. So having the goal for students be improvement and not perfection can be helpful as well. For avoiding discouragement, students can become discouraged if they're striving for perfection, but if they're striving for improvement, that's always possible, should always be achievable. So thank you very much again for inviting me to speak. I really enjoyed preparing and giving this talk, and I hope that you found it helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lamena, for your presentation, and to all the participants, thank you very much for attending our conference. We hope you enjoyed this experience. Keep in mind that in order to attend our different talks and workshops, you need to click on the heading of the session of your preference. Look for them on the link provided on our Facebook page, International Conference for Teachers of English. We invite you for our second session and join us. Have a good rest of the day.